We've got a guest, On3.com, columnist for college football, Jesse Simonton on Twitter, at Jesse R.E. Simonton. Give him a follow. He's got a couple stories up right now at On3.com, including with Chip Kelly eyeing an exit from UCLA. The Bruins made a mistake not firing their head coach last November, and he dives into it. It's a really good read. Jesse joins us now. Good morning, Jesse. Thanks for hopping on with us this morning. I really enjoyed the article, and I want to ask, how did we get to this point where a program doesn't want to coach, but the coach is trying to leave the program but can't get a job yet, and here you are in February not having any idea what the future holds between the two?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brandon. I mean, UCLA is in a lose-lose situation right now, and I think that they, hindsight is always 20/20 in a lot of these situations. But when that news leaked after UCLA kind of no-showed, had a real terrible performance against Arizona State, all those reports leaked out from some Bruins insiders that they were going to move on from Chip Kelly, that it had been 6 seasons. The results simply hadn't been there with the expectations. He was kind of clashing with boosters. The NIL funds were insufficient. And then he goes and he really kind of embarrasses Lincoln Riley that very next week. They have a huge win against USC. Didn't even matter that a lot of people forget they didn't lose to Cal in ugly fashion the very next week, but that USC win seemed to save his job. And yet with everything that's kind of materialized after that we can get into, it really looks like they should have pulled the trigger when they, were itching to do so back in mid-November.
It felt like, Jesse, for us covering the Pac-12 out here, that it just felt like that was like inevitable to a certain degree, that like this had run its course and it hadn't been very successful. Why didn't UCLA do the obvious thing?
Well, I think, for one, I'm not sure that I think that they, you have a guy like Dante Moore, and he's on your team, and you're not really sure how that situation's going to unfold. And so there were ADs this past cycle that were nervous about opening up that whole free transfer window within your roster. I think they also probably felt, hey, look, Chip has put together a really strong defensive staff. With DeAnton Lynn, a young guy he brought from the NFL. What happens? They totally turn around UCLA's defense. They had one of the top 10 defenses in the country a year ago. And the fact that you're going into the Big Ten next season in 2024, I think they were pushed towards maintaining that continuity. Again, then he wins the bowl game, so they go 8-5. Doesn't look quite as bad. But everything that's unfolded since has just been disastrous. You lose Lynn to USC. Moore goes to the transfer portal anyways and ends up transferring to Oregon. And then the top two guys who absolutely would have been UCLA's main targets, Jed Fish and Jonathan Smith, are now no longer in the Pac-12 and no longer at their current jobs. Fish is now at Washington, and Jonathan Smith was one of the first coaches hired when he left for Michigan State. So this has all culminated into a very, very bad no-win situation. No matter how this plays out, if Chip ends up getting another job, be it with the Seattle Seahawks or something else, UCLA is in a really rough spot. And if he stays, they're kind of in a broken marriage where clearly each party isn't exactly satisfied with the other right now.
Now, Jesse Simonton's our guest here, national college football columnist for On3.com. He's got some good pieces up at On3.com, including this Chip Kelly one that he broke over the weekend. Let me ask you, if he doesn't get a coveted OC gig in the NFL, I don't even know what's available. I have to go look through it. But if he doesn't leave for the NFL and he stays, is UCLA really going to run this in? Because if they start the season something like 1-5, doesn't that kind of feel like the obvious first coach kind of fired in the Big Ten because neither likes each other? I guess I'm asking, if Chip doesn't find a job, UCLA is really going to try to stick this out for a few weeks into the season? Or is this something where you could see him coaching the entire year? I don't understand, I guess, the strategy of UCLA's side of this.
Well, the problem with where UCLA is right now is, as we sit here on, February 5th or so, whatever it is, early February, UCLA, if they were to fire Chip Kelly, let's say tomorrow, that 30-day transfer portal window would then open up for their roster. So how much are you willing to hemorrhage your own team right now heading into what's going to be a very difficult situation in the Big Ten next season. So if they do if Chip does not get a job, which I believe the Seattle Seahawks is one of the only NFL coordinator jobs still open. Now the Oakland Raiders still have that opening since Cliff ended up going to.
No, they hired Luke Getsy. They got Getsy from the Chicago guy. Yeah.
Okay. So I missed that. So one situation that could be interesting to monitor is that Chip has been at least somewhat, I think, linked to the Boston College opening. I don't think that's going to happen because I do think that Chip wants out of college football, and that seems to be trending towards Bill O'Brien. But if Bill O'Brien gets hired, what does that mean for Ohio State? I doubt that would be an avenue for Chip, but he does have a relationship with Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day played for Chip at New Hampshire, so that could be something to potentially monitor. Either way, I don't think that Chip is going to be long-term for UCLA. It would not behoove UCLA to make a move, though, now, because they've been backed into a corner where if you did, you would lose already. You've already lost some of your best players on the roster anyways. How much more are you willing to kind of give up there?
What was your read on the Big Ten and SEC announcing their advisory joint committee group evaluating the landscape of the future of the sport? What was your read on that?
It's a power move by two power players. I mean, it's not a surprise that Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey are looking to kind of flex their elbows and make moves here. They're both of them, the two power conferences. My colleague Andy Staples has kind of nicknamed them Big and Rich. That they're going to be the power players in the sport. So if this was 5 years ago, that relationship never would have happened because it was like ice and oil and water with Sankey and Kevin Warren. But Petitti and Sankey have a much better relationship. They are going to dictate and kind of determine what the future of college athletics look like, especially because there is this kind of power vacuum right now with no commissioner and no real, structure or guidelines from the NCAA.
Jesse, I'll get you out of here on this one, man, because the good stuff on UCLA, but the college football world is interesting. It's evolving, but evolving in a lot of people's ways, not in the best direction. Do you think this ultimately leads to a Big Ten SEC break-off of just them two, or do you think they're just looking to consolidate most of the money and most of the available spots in whatever expanded playoff they conclude with in a couple years?
That is absolutely a factor. I think the biggest thing for these schools is what does the future of college athletics look like in terms of structure, infrastructure, model. And I think that's the big focus that Petitti and Sankey have. And I think that would include a lot of those West Coast schools, whether it is Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA and even the Arizona schools that want to participate because in this Super League, you have a league like that that's basically a mini NFL. How many schools are really going to sign up to lose 8-9 games a year? So if you kind of maintain what college football has looked like for a long time, but modernize it with, hey, these kids need to be on scholarship, but they need to be on some sort of contract where, the transfer portal isn't running wild. NIL becomes largely a non-factor for the majority of the players, unless you're Caleb Williams. And I think that would help alleviate a lot of the problems right now in college athletics. Figure out a collective bargaining agreement, admit and acknowledge that this is basically a mini professional league, but you could still maintain the modicum of amateurism by, these kids are still going to school. They're still doing that, but they're just, contractually paid to pay a sport that is making all these schools ungodly amounts of money.
Yeah, there we go. Good stuff. Jesse Simonton of On3.com, national college football columnist. He's got some pieces up On3.com, including this Chip Kelly eyeing an exit from UCLA and how the Bruins made a mistake not firing their head coach last November to get ahead of the hiring cycle and trying to salvage the portal and recruiting classes and whatnot. It's a really good read, and it certainly seems like a very bad marriage. Jesse Simonton on Twitter, at Jesse Reese Simonton. Jesse, thanks for the time this morning. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, there we go. Good stuff from Jesse Simonton of On3.com.